Senator from 13, in your description, I'm going to admit here that I'm having trouble reading the bill, and that's the help I'm asking for. And so in your description of the bill and in my reading of the bill, I see that it refers to concealed weapons and concealed carry. But my understanding is that open carry is also an issue, and it would be covered in this bill also. Is that correct?
Senator McKenzie to respond.
Thank you, Mr. President. No, it just applies to concealed carry.
Senator Schmidt?
Mr.
Follow-up?
Follow-up, Mr. Chairman.
Senator McKenzie, would you respond further? Senator Schmidt.
So I'm trying to understand, if we look at page 3 on lines 6 and 7, it says the authority shall not extend to regulating or prohibiting the lawful possession, carrying or transporting of firearms by persons with those designations, which is the retired police and folks with enhanced concealed carry. I think that's what those refer to. And therefore, the ability for those people to open carry in places below that, where they're prohibited, is not covered. That's how I read the bill. I'm sorry.
McKenzie to respond.
Thank you, Mr. President. You need to read the bill in conjunction with Article 1, Section 11, the Declaration of Rights of the Idaho Constitution. There, it allows us to pass laws governing the carry of weapons concealed on the person, and then it has a few other things, but where we are allowed to regulate is in that area in particular.
Thank you.
Further debate. Senator Stennett.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the good senator from 13 yield to a question?
Senator McKenzie, would you yield?
Thank you, Mr. President, but no.
So further debate.
Yes, to debate the bill, Mr. President.
Senator Stennett has the floor.
Thank you. I was just going to ask the definition of what is considered concealed weapons so we have a clear idea, but I will forsake that for my debate against the bill. Senators, according to the U.S. Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Investigation, the National Institute of Justice, in the line of fire, violence against law enforcement, it reads, if I may, Mr. President.
Senator Stennett, having identified the source, the senator may read.
Thank you. No matter how trained a gun carrier is, the body has a normal response to emergency situations. The blood is pulled from the skin to the heart, resulting in a higher heart rate and loss of fine motor skills. The combination of the two leads the carrier to have a loss of actions in getting out their own gun to protect themselves. The combination of these two leads creates an inability to defend themselves against a threat. Even if the carrier is able to get their gun out, the accuracy of them being able to hit a target before they are hit themselves reduces significantly the longer the shooter is in the sight of the other carrier. Police and trained professionals spend months and years raising their reaction times and building muscle memory to be able to react in such dangerous situations. Concealed carry permit holders are only required to have a minimum training to be issued as this permit, nowhere near the amount needed to be able to actually eliminate or even help in a shooting situation. Most real-world shootouts last less than 10 seconds. Even with extensive training, officers say that they hit their target maybe 30% of the time. This enhanced carry requires only the initial training for the permit. What is his or her chances of hitting the correct target? What if they miss and shoot someone else? Police have a tough time distinguishing between shooter and people defending themselves in an emergency. When law enforcement enters a room where there is more than one gun drawn, who's the bad guy? Concealed handguns are not an effective form of self-defense. A November 2009 peer-reviewed study established in the American Journal of Public Health by Dr. Charles Branis, if I may quote him, Mr. President.
Senator may quote.
Found that someone carrying a gun for self-defense was 4.5 times more likely to be shot during an assault than the assault victim without a gun. Attackers often surprise victims, making it difficult to use a concealed handgun. I have received many emails from professors, staff, students, and parents who have huge concern about workplace safety. Professors have had escalation of altercations in the classroom already. The FBI reports that 1.7 million incidences of workplace violence happens each year. Anger often displaces reason. Having guns in the hands of students can turn a shoving match into a deadly confrontation that could have involved unrelated bystanders in that situation on campus. Now let's be realistic. Young adults on our campuses are exposed to stresses, drugs, alcohol, bullying, and mental illness. Around 95% of gun deaths in Idaho are suicides. Suicide attempts are successful more than 90% of the time when it involves a gun, and fatal only 3% of the time if drugs are involved. So with HEPA and no FOIA, and Idaho's confidentiality laws protecting the permittee of a gun, how do institutions and law enforcement verify who shouldn't be packing? Who has the history of violence, mental illness, substance abuse? How can they possibly know? If concealed carry is allowed in the classroom and certain venues, would you check for permits at classroom doors? How would public venues and accesses be monitored? Would you stop everyone at the door where guns aren't permitted? Every time somebody enters a dorm? Gatherings and entertainment occur all over campuses all the time, including open grass areas. How much manpower would be required to check at these venues? Universities have satellite facilities all over the state. Are they to be armed too? Many campuses don't have the manpower to monitor or to have sufficient armed security, and they aren't adequately trained for volatile situations. All the universities we spoke to say this is extensive in the amount of expense it would be to universities, and this is not reflected in the fiscal note. So if the state is going to impose this law on them without adequate funding, we will have it come down to tuition and again further burden our kids. The Supreme Court decision in District of Columbia versus Heller reasoned that Second Amendment rights have limits and that bans on concealed carry have been legal. And if I may quote from that decision, Mr. President.
Senator may read the decision.
The Supreme Court determined that although we do not undertake an exhaustive historical analysis today of the full scope of the Second Amendment, nothing in our opinion should be taken to cast doubt on long-standing prohibitions on the possession of firearms by felons and the mentally ill, or laws forbidding the carrying of firearms in sensitive areas such as schools and government buildings. Justice Anton Scalia wrote in his primary majority opinion, like most rights, the right secured by the Second Amendment is not unlimited. Courts routinely explain that the right was not a right to keep and carry any weapon whatsoever in any manner for any purpose. As one Boise University professor put it to me, when a student chose a permanent solution for his pain with a gun, please explain to his parents how this bill is supposed to make things better. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further debate? Senator Hagedorn, District 14.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think one of the things that I appreciate is the fact that we have so many willing to stand up to protect us against ourselves. When it's a constitutional right, that's incumbent upon each and every one of us to protect us. I am my first responder. I would much rather face a crime with a way to protect myself than have someone who's standing up to protect me from myself show up 5-10 minutes later to try and protect me from whoever was trying to perpetuate that crime. Having been in a situation, and I think most of you know, having been in a situation before, I was very thankful that I had training, that I had the adequate sense and knowledge of the safety, how to properly store my firearms, how to properly use my firearms to stop a crime in my own home. Taking that capability away from our citizens who have gone through security background checks, gone through training in firearms themselves, and voluntarily purchased their own firearms and ammunition and spent probably close to $1,000 at the end of the day to get an enhanced concealed permit, buying almost 100 rounds and expending 100 rounds of ammunition just in that training, where then you would go out and practice after that. We aren't talking about a school kid that just kind of happens upon a weapon and says, I think I'm going to carry this. We're talking about citizens who have gone beyond the norm for whatever reason, whether they have threats against their life, whether they feel compelled to protect their own family or protect their property, whatever the reason is, they have chosen to go through this training and spend this money and be their own first responder. Taking that right away from them is not appropriate. Our Constitution, our U.S. Constitution, and our Idaho State Constitution clearly says that that Idaho has the ability to manage where we allow concealed weapons. And we have done that. And I think we've done that very well since 2008 when we ran Senate Bill 1441. The people that continuously talk about the woes that this is going to cause also continuously walk about in our malls, our restaurants, stores, cafes, with people that are carrying concealed weapons, and no one has been hurt. But you know what has happened? Because Idaho does allow concealed carry, we have this unknown deterrent that continuously walks around, where bad guys don't know who's armed, who's not armed. Bad guys don't know who to attack or who not to attack, except they know on campus that's a gun-free zone. And we've witnessed this time and time again, gun-free zones. If I were a bad guy, I think that's where I would go. The likelihood of someone in that area, a gun-free zone, that would not confront me is a lot less likely for me to go do a crime, to go do something stupid. None of us in this room have a sign in our front yard that said, "My house doesn't have guns." And there's a reason for that. Why do we put those signs on our campuses? Why do we keep our campuses gun-free zones? But wait, they're not gun-free zones. They have rules that say you can't carry guns on campus. And there's been questions about, okay, well, if we allow people to carry guns on campus, into the classroom, and into these other things, how are we going to do that? How are we going to check that? Are we going to have people at the door? Well, what's the process today? I have been in classrooms, I have been in venues that are over 1,000 people where supposedly guns can't be carried. I haven't been checked. If the campuses are going to have regulations, then they need to enforce those regulations, which they are not doing today. I can't think of a single person who has been expelled or fired for carrying a concealed weapon on campus. Yet it's their rules. How is it being enforced? And would those assets or resources for enforcing the rules today then just be used to enforce the new consistent carry on campus or concealed campus carry that we're implementing with this bill? The issue here, when we did 1441, was we had political subdivisions all over the state creating all kinds of regulations for carry. And we tried to reel that in so people that did expend that $1,000 or more to be able to conceal carry for themselves could have a consistent set of rules and regulations. So when they carried, they knew where they could carry and where they could not carry. It's very clear. When you get training, it's very clear where you are not able to carry, except on campuses in Idaho. We have 4 campuses alone in the Treasure Valley. None of their rules are consistent. I don't want to break anybody's rules, yet I don't know what all 4 campuses' rules are. Where are the boundaries? BSU, for example. Where are the boundaries for BSU? We've got a building right on the corner of Front and 9th Street, or Capitol, I believe, that says BSU all over it. I don't know if that's campus or not. Am I allowed to carry there, or am I not allowed to carry there? Inconsistencies is what we're trying to overcome with this bill. We're trying to make it consistent when we train people so they can carry. We need to make it practical for them to understand what they can and what they cannot do. Clearly identifying that they cannot carry in K through 12, they cannot carry in criminal institutions or in courthouses, in classrooms, and in venues above 1,000 people on campus. That's pretty simple to understand. People that carry can understand that and make accommodations for that. Right now, they can't do that. This bill helps clarify for those people who have reason to carry, have been vetted, spent the money, trained themselves, and continuously keep up with that training to understand where they can go. This is a very good bill. It does cause some concern for the people that have not been in this situation of being around, or believe they haven't been around people that have been carrying before, but quite frankly, there's not a single person in this room or in the gallery that have not been around someone who's concealed carry. The purpose of concealed carry is so people don't know. You're not supposed to know people are carrying concealed. That's the deterrent. And that deterrent effect is what we want on our campuses, so we don't have bad people coming in to do bad things. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further debate?